Welcome back to the Cow Park Bros podcast. Jason and I are fresh off the second segment discussing uh, uh, an, an off election year, or at least when I say off election, I mean we ain't voting for president, but we got this other shit that matter, whether you know it or not. Jason, I do find it fascinating that you haven't voted in the midterms yet.
Well, again, I haven't said I've never done it. I said I haven't done it this year or since I've been in Indiana at all. But
In this third segment, we're going to be talking about. God damn it, Jason. Just like you said we weren't a political show, I also was of the opinion that we weren't going to be talking baseball.
that's your own horrible assumption because we obviously sports is one of the tenants topics. And last time I checked, baseball is still a sport, and MLB is still one of the major sports leagues in this country. So why you thought we're never going to talk about baseball? I don't know why you thought that.
Ironically, I've actually watched quite a bit of this World Series. But with the fact that the Atlanta Braves have been number one, they've been on an incredible run. But the fact that they are in the World Series, they're going to be in the limelight because they had the All Star game. All Star game got moved, uh, which pissed off a lot of folks. And then the most notorious gesture that many sports fans would deem inappropriate, or at a minimum culturally insensitive, would be the Atlanta Braves shop. Now, Jason, you and I are of a certain big age. Um, the shop has been around as long as we can recall, right?
Yeah, we did talk about, and you asked yesterday during the meeting, when did the tomahawk chop first start? As far as with the Braves using it, at least. I mentioned that it seems to have started around 91, back when they made the World Series. And I found articles to confirm that, which we'll talk about. But yeah, ever since I've pretty much been a baseball watcher and fan, has been the chop became a thing back in 1991, the World Series, Braves versus the Twins. They were doing it. So
Yeah, I'm referencing an article from ESPN by author Jeff Passan. Um, the what he's referencing is basically he's calling out the position of the commissioner Rob Manfred. He said it's very perplexing, and he says to see Commissioner Manfred try to explain why MLB was backing the chop was to see an anthropomorphic pretzel twisting itself in real time. Well, that's a tongue twister. It depends on, now, this is according to Manfred. It depends on the way the community perceives the gesture. And in Atlanta, they've done a great job with the Native Americans, Manfred said. I think the Native American community is the most important group to decide whether it's appropriate or not, and they have been unwaveringly supportive.
I'm going to call BS on that later, FYI.
Manfred was referring to the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, a North Carolina based tribe with whom the Braves say over the past year and a half they've developed a cultural working relationship that has resulted in meaningful action. This is now, according to Passan, this is also a complete about face by the chief of the Eastern Band. This week, Richard Sneed told the Associated Press, "I'm not offended by somebody waving their arm at a sports game." He went on to say that the shop is the least of our problems compared to crime and poverty in the indigenous community, as if getting rid of the shop and obviously deeper, more important issues are somehow mutually exclusive. Yeah, Fasad was dead on this one, man. He's calling him out on this shit. So basically, it's like trying to say that black people shouldn't be concerned with police brutality because there's crime and poverty um, affecting us as well. I'm like, so basically, we can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Like that. There's one thing to be culturally insensitive. It's another thing to insult a motherfucker's intelligence. And that's absolutely what this token representative is effectively doing. You know, MLB, MLB's commissioner basically found they found the equivalent of the one black guy on Fox News that was willing to say that they don't like the president.
Yeah. Also in a meeting yesterday, I told you I was very curious in regards to how the Braves really, if anything, have really done with the Native American community. Because Manfred said, "Oh, they approve of it." Blah 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 blah. I'm like, do they? And we called them out too when it comes to, you know, did you find one guy? Not this guy that you just mentioned necessarily, but would you find one guy essentially, or five guys, or 10 people to verify it that they don't mind it? So that means everybody in the Native American community don't mind it. Come on, bro. Um, but yeah, Chop's been around since '91. Uh, Conveniently enough, they made the World Series, which how it got really popular nationally. Um, and also we see the Braves back in the World Series now. Fans are doing it again. Not that they stopped doing it because they haven't, but it's back on the national platform again. They've even had a video on social media of Trump and his toy wife doing it at the game because they were there apparently looking completely idiotic when they do it too, which makes it so like, come on. If there's any reason, not well, it's Georgia, so maybe not. But if there's any reason to stop doing it, it's because he's doing it. It's kind of like a thing where kids might think something's cool till their parents start doing it. Then all of a sudden, it's not cool anymore. That's that Trump effect. Him doing it, yeah, stop doing it. But yeah, I found an article from NBC News, and it's titled "Tribes Push Back Against MLB Claims That Native Americans Approve of Tomahawk Chop." And this is an article dated October 27th. Again, something that came out during the World Series. Native American groups pushed back Wednesday against Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred's claim that indigenous communities support the Atlanta Braves Tomahawk Chop. Manfred told reporters at the World Series on Tuesday that Native Americans near Atlanta don't mind the sight of the Brave fans chanting in full battle cry during games at Trust Park in Cobb County, which is north of Atlanta, as we mentioned, not in Atlanta. Quotation here: "The Braves have done a phenomenal job," which we already read, so I'm not going to repeat it. But Jason Salzman, a spokesman for Chief David Hill of the Muskogee Nation, said Manfred can't base his opinion on any one stance from a Native community. If you just go out and get a group here and there and say you're good, I don't think that's how Indian country works. Salzman said, "You need to speak to the whole of Indian country and make sure that you get a grand consensus." I will say that they have that. They wouldn't. I say they wouldn't have that. Excuse me. The ancestral homelands of the Muscogee Nation before its forced relocation to what is now Oklahoma along the deadly Trail of Tears in the 19th century are in what is now Georgia. The tribe doesn't support the tomahawk chop. Manfred. Oh! I gotta continue this.
keep
Manfred.
going, keep going, dog.
Manfred said he consulted with the local Cherokees. None of the three federally recognized bands of Cherokees is based in Georgia. When you said North Carolina, like, wait a minute, the Braves aren't in North Carolina. The Cherokee Nation and the United Kiowa Band of Cherokee Indians were forcibly removed to Oklahoma, where they remain. The Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians remains in nearby North Carolina. The principal chief, Richard Sneed, has said for years that the tribe doesn't support the Braves cheer. So I had to continue reading that last part because I felt it was pretty pertinent.
Yeah. Not only are there no tribes in Georgia, also the Braves aren't in fucking Atlanta because they had to white flight that shit too. So this is just icing on top of the shit Sunday, man. Like it's cowardly because Manfred basically said, "Yeah, it's fucking racist, but what can you do? Baseball's a regional sport." I'm paraphrasing here. But that's pretty spot on what he said.
I mean, not that it's not. Oh, yeah, it's a regional sport, but so what? I mean,
It's a regional sport, and what he basically is resting on is that, yeah, this is incredibly racist, but we're gonna hold on to it as long as we can because I'm afraid to lose any money.
well, my question to that is, how would he lose money just because people stop doing the chop?
Because this is about basically the specter of white people's feelings if they can't say and do really racist shit.
Well, as we always talk about, people
I
hold on to
mean,
things
I
that they
mean,
cherish. So yeah,
I mean,
you're probably
how,
right.
how's this any different from the Cleveland Indians and Chief Wahoo?
We can't call them that no more. They're not the Indians no more. They're the Guardians. Get it right, Terrence.
How's this any different than the Washington football team?
We're going to get into that. Like you mentioned yesterday, there is a little bit of a difference there because the organizations we were just talking about, the Washington football team, the Cleveland Guardians, they have control over their name. They have sole control over it. They don't have to mess around with it. They control it. They can change it if they want to. I mean, obviously they should have legal processes to do it, but they have control over it. Although the Braves do have some control over their, being complicit in people doing the chop, they can't fully stop fans from doing it.
They're not even
How, how,
trying. That's why I'm
however,
call, That's why I'm calling that. That's why I'm calling bullshit on that.
right,
They're
right,
not
but
even trying.
right. I'm saying answer your question though. What's the difference? Although I did find an article that does bring up a good idea, which makes sense if were to be implemented, which I feel like it had to be done. Could be. I feel like it had to be done by the Braves organization, not MLB. But then that goes into something I was saying yesterday, is that what Manfred said is stupid, and people are calling him out on it. I still put more on the Braves organization when it comes to them, like you said, allowing it to happen because they're the ones that have control over it. Because even if Manfred came out against it, there probably isn't much he could do about it if the Braves still continue to do it because it's technically their team, it's their organization, it's their state. Well, not their stadium, but their games, their events. So, want to kind of bring this up real quick because I know you also inquired about how it started, the tomahawk chop. I found an article from USA Today that kind of goes into that. Um, Now, obviously, the Braves in general have been using Native American imagery since way back in like the civil rights days, 1966, I believe it was. But specifically, um, the chop made its first appearance at Braves games in late 1991, which again they want to go into the World Series that year. During the '91 National League Championship Series between the Braves and the Pittsburgh Pirates, the New York Times referred to the new craze as the Braves Tomahawk phenomenon. So obviously, Florida State Seminoles, you've probably seen it too. They've used the chop, as well way before the Braves started. I believe back in like the '80s, like when Deion Sanders used to play there. Now, obviously, if you recall, Deion Sanders played for also the Braves as well, and supposedly it started with some Florida State fans at Braves games that started doing it while Deion Sanders came to bat. So naturally, when those group of fans started doing it, everybody started doing it. But it then became not just from Deion Sanders; it came from them doing it for just it's like a rally cry in a way. And then as they got further and further in the that series, and then into the World Series, boom, they're on the national stage, the world stage, and now all of a sudden it's a phenomenon. So um, that's kind of how I got started. You mentioned, like I said before, that's when I first started watching baseball. Was around that time frame, and that's all I knew. Even I was doing the tomahawk chop because obviously I didn't know any better. I was 11. I didn't know any better. But that's a little more of the story about how and when it started in general. Uh, but yeah, that's Yeah, I've been around 30 years, dog. 30 years. Now, obviously, we can find other articles to kind of point out when it started getting realized that they probably need to stop doing it, but it still persists. I do want to bring up an idea about how an article, idea in an article that I found about how the Braves can stop it. But I want to throw back to you and get some more thoughts from you.
Yeah. Yeah. The basically MLB commissioner is full of shit. He's not operating in good faith. Uh, he got his one token chief to go along with this shit. Um, and basically the Braves can't be trumpeting the fucking theme music to the chop like it's Sir Foster out there at the Hawks game. That's all.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was mentioning before when it comes to how the Braves play a part in it because back when it first started, the like I mentioned, the organist Carolyn King at the time, she'd be the one in the background playing the music, kind of get the drum beat going, and that's why the fans started doing the chop. Well, if somebody, now obviously the fans can still do it, but if the Braves organization or the organist wasn't encouraging it, that's how the Braves themselves could move away from, well, we're not encouraging it anymore, but we can't stop the fans. Well, I found an article in Yahoo Sports from October 29th of this year titled MLB should look to European soccer for a way to stop the tomahawk chop. I'm like, okay. But, and of course, it mentions Rob Manfred's comments, blah, 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 that we talked about that makes him sound more like an idiot, even more so than he already did. But it talks about how FIFA and the UEFA, how they punish racist and anti gay chants that happen at their events. And basically, they use this system here. And it's basically kind of the referees to kind of enforce this. Basically, it's kind of like a 3-step process. So basically, step one, once a referee notices or is made aware of the behavior, they stop the game and they have an announcement made over the stadium loudspeakers asking fans to immediately stop. That's step one. Step two, if the behavior does not stop after the game is restarted, the referee can stop the game for a longer period of time, like 5 to 10 minutes, and order both teams to leave the pitch or the field, and then another announcement is made. If the behavior doesn't stop after the second restart and all reasonable measures have been taken, the referees can decide to abandon the match for the good or permanently. So that's what they do in their leagues. So basically, they're saying the MLB can essentially do the exact same thing, except step three will be a little different. If the chant doesn't stop at the second restart, the umpires can decide that the game should be stopped permanently, causing the home team to automatically forfeit the game. So obviously, forfeiting the game that's a loss. And obviously, if you're obviously you're trying to win, so that would be a bad thing. But then also going back to step two, if you're stopping the game for 5 or 10 minutes, if anybody knows anything about baseball, stopping that momentum for a pitcher for 5 or 10 minutes, you don't want to do that. It's not good. Nobody wants that. But then the article goes even further and says, okay, instead of issuing fines, what you can do is, if all this stuff happens, you can deem them and say, okay, not only do you forfeit this one game, now in your next game, you have to play that game with no fans. So the team has to play in front of nobody, so eerily silent stadium, and the team has to issue refunds to everybody that had a ticket for that game. So now, if you're affecting the team on the field when it comes to them having to play in front of nobody. They already got forfeited the game the last time, and now you're losing money. Depending on what team we're talking about, we'll say the Yankees, we'll say the Cubs, even who sell out games all the time. Take 40,000 tickets away for one game that you had in your pocket. Now you're basically giving that money back. If MLB was to enforce stuff like that, they're saying stuff like the chop will go away because the Braves will have to they'll be forced in a position to where they would have to do those things, and they would encourage people to stop doing it, or else, there you go. And obviously, the fans want to be at the games themselves too. They don't want to be out of a ticket to their favorite team's games. So that's I find that pretty interesting. I thought conceptually is a pretty good idea. It's a good way to help the team kind of feel the pressure of having to stop. We get the way they have the fans feel the pressure to stop, and also a way that the players themselves can encourage things as well. To say, hey, calm that down. We don't want that. Calm that down. So, what do you think about that, Terrence?
Um, my first thoughts are the last fucking sport I want to be longer is baseball. Um, Also, with a guy like Rob Manfred, he won't even consider that proposal. So it it's it's it sounds good on paper. Um, I think that's a good look for that league. If they've done it and it's actually worked, I know soccer, especially with some black players, has been exceptionally fucking racist. So if they've been able to make some inroads there, then good for them. Sounds like who's ever in charge of that league has a better moral compass than Rob Manfred does right now. That's that's the biggest thing for me is Jason. Number one, I don't give a shit if there's literally 5 Native American people left on planet Earth. It's still fucking wrong that they're doing it.
That's kind of like I meant to mention this before, but that's kind of like what we talked about yesterday with the Washington football team. We remember like 10 years ago plus, they were going through the same thing while people pushing back for them to change their name. And then I don't not to say Dan Snyder brought this up, but you would see fans of the team mention, "Oh, they surveyed Native Americans and they're okay with it." Well, the Native Americans said they were okay with it. They were surveyed. They said they were fine with it. Well, come to find out, the survey was very like kind of like the one article I mentioned. The survey that was referring to was a very small portion of people polled, maybe 500 people, as referenced in the article, and I'm sure you know just from common sense. There's probably way more than a quintessential number more than 500 people in the Native American community. And like you said, even if in that 500 people survey, even if 400 of them said they're fine with it, well, that still means 100 of them weren't. And then you multiply that out amongst the entirety of the Indian country, as like old boy said. Then what do you got? 5,000 people that don't like it? 10,000? Whatever the math equals out to. So yeah, yeah. So I agree with you that and two things you said that even if it's 5 people, it's probably something you got to think about. Reworking. But then, like you said, though, if you're only talking to one person or 10 or 20, is that enough?
I don't think
Like do you got to talk to 20 black people to realize that a bunch of fans, wearing blackface in the crowd probably isn't a good thing, or talking to 2 of them enough to make you realize it's probably not good. Common sense, bro. Come on,
yeah.
not you. I mean, Manfred, for example. So
Yeah, yeah, man, yeah. Leave it up to a guy like Manfred. Basically, all it takes is 2 black people to say that it's okay. Despite the fact that Milton Bradley was a complete fucking asshole, that it's perfectly okay for fans in multiple cities to call him a nigger.
well, if he's only looking for 2 people, just tell him to find Candace Owens and Stacey Dash, and there you go.
Yep,
There's your 2.
quota unlocked.
Cheat code level 2.
Right. Yep. Rob Manfred God mode, basically.
Power up, son. Power up.
Yep. All right, folks. That concludes our third and final segment of the show. Coming up next, we'll close out the show with our final thoughts and any errors and omissions.